So I'd like to remind you just a little bit before we start about the ground rules, as I call them, of book cover design, and that is, number one, a good book cover can't save a bad story. And it's actually kind of interesting because a really good book cover, it heightens reader expectations. So the better your book cover is, the more they will expect your book to be really good. So sometimes if you have a really good book cover and a mediocre story or a not very good story, then they'll be disappointed because they were already so excited about the book based on the cover. So they expected really big things, and so they were more critical and judgmental, which leads to disappointment. And that can actually lead in negative reviews, which is interesting because sometimes you could have started out with an ugly cover and a really good book, and the opposite would be the case, where they would have low expectations, but they would buy it anyway, and then they'd be pleasantly surprised, leading to really good reviews, which can work. It's just much harder to get started that way. So a good story can survive an ugly cover. I know a lot of major best-selling authors who started out with ugly covers, but they survived. The story was good enough that some people took a chance on it, usually because they give it away for free or it's cheap and they do a lot of promotion. You just need enough people to read it and love it for it to catch on, and then even if it has an ugly cover, you'll keep selling, and then eventually you can replace that ugly cover with a good cover and you'll start selling much faster. So you don't really want to try to have a strategy of starting with an ugly cover if you can avoid it. You want to have the best book that you can and the best cover you can. That's really the formula for success. If you had to choose, it's better to have an ugly cover and a great story than a great cover and a bad story, because there's no real chance for success with a bad story. If you have a mediocre or bad, even if it's pretty good but it's just not awesome, you're not really going to be successful unless your particular genre readers really love it. And that's the other thing about, good or bad stories. Writing isn't so much, it's not about the quality of the writing, it's about the story itself. And so you can take a story that has a really powerful impact on people, even if it's written kind of badly, it can still work really well. It can still really mean something to your reader. So it's not really about the quality of the writing. It's about the story. Is it meaty? Is it hold up? Is it satisfying? And so you want the best book cover that you can get, but it's not going to save your book if it's not good enough for success. And for success, most authors, what they dream of is, huge success, selling 1 million copies and making a fortune. And you're not going to be able to do that without a really amazing book unless you publish a lot of books. And that's the other thing. You can have mediocre books with mediocre covers, and if you publish 100 of them, you'll still probably make quite a bit of money. But if it's a really terrible story, you can't just crank out garbage and put beautiful covers on them and expect them to sell, because that'll actually tank really fast. What'll happen is you'll sell a lot really quickly, and then all those people will be disappointed and they'll leave you 1-star reviews, and then your book will just die because nobody will trust it anymore. So it's something to keep in mind before we talk about, good cover and bad book cover. Your cover is really important, but ultimately success is going to depend on the story itself and whether the story is satisfying to the target readers.